So this morning I'm going to talk about, as I said, the transformation of Horizon Power. This is an operational and a digital transformation for us. Started some 4 years ago. And part of that story will also be why we need to transform and some of the innovations that Horizon Power have done as well. A little bit about Horizon Power first. So we're a small, vertically integrated regional utility in Western Australia. We go from Columbaroo way at the top down to Esperance way at the bottom. 2.4 million square kilometres of service area and only 48,000 customers. So we don't have many customers per square kilometre. We've got 34 microgrids, islanded microgrids, and 2 connected grids. So we're a high-cost, high-subsidised business and a lot of opportunity. So when you talk about disruption, changing models, when you've got a high-cost, high-regulated industry, it's coming faster than probably you anticipate. When we started our transformation journey back, say, 4 years ago, most in the organisation would have said, like a lot of utilities, that we are an asset management business, a monopoly that actually happens to also sell electricity, but really asset management. So we don't think like that anymore. When you start a transformation, you really got to look at why are you transforming and look at what's happening in the industry and other people around you. So up here is disruptors. So you've heard this, Uber, major taxi company, no taxis. Facebook, largest media company, no content. Alibaba, most expensive or biggest retailer, no inventory. These are different business models. We have to learn from these business models. So we all know they're enabled by technology, enabled by innovation, but what actually drives these disruptors is customer expectations. The traditional service providers, taxis, didn't listen to the customer, didn't meet the customer's expectations. So somebody came in to do it instead, and that was enabled by technology. So how does Horizon Power learn from that as we transform? How do you all learn from that as you transform? We've got to create customer-centric businesses if we don't have it already. We were facing this. You've all seen researchers and those experts out there that predict these new futures for us. We were facing this future here, the future electricity system. Now, the only thing common for us here, going back to the past, is centralised generation and transmission distribution. The rest's completely foreign. A bit of demand-side management, but the rest is foreign. All of a sudden, you've got data storage centres. You've got customers, DR, so distributed energy on the roofs of customers, generating their own, heaven forbid. You've got, distributed storage. They've got their own batteries as well. You've got customers that are connecting with smart devices. There's been talk this morning about, smart appliances connecting. We'll be controlling people's houses and air conditioning soon. People might say, oh, why would you do it? You don't want to do it now. Everything is about timing. Customers will want us to do it at the right time, saves them money, makes it easier. We've got over here the rise of the prosumer, so our customers are consuming and producing. It's a whole different world here for us. And we've got to somehow sit in this, and it's far more customer-centric than it's ever been. So that was a little bit about the why. First of all, in transformation, you transform your core business. Now, the core in Pilates is stabilising the body. I don't know that much about Pilates, but it's stabilising the body. So you have to stabilise the core part of your business. You've got to transform that core part. So we undertook a strategic review, started back in 2013. We employed BCG to come along. It's a two-phased approach. The first one is about operational turnaround. Now, we had to make a step change in cost reduction to be able to survive. So it was about making that step change, and then you can see phase 2 is driving innovation to increase and grow your business. If you don't, it declines. So our strategic review started in phase 1 was the turnaround of our business. Now, we had to make sure that the health and safety of our employees was paramount and de-stress them. We had to also make sure our reliability of our safety and reliability of our networks was also important. And we had to drive changes that were consistent, permanent. This is not about a shortcut exercise. They had to be consistently there. So we benchmarked against US co-op utilities. They are lean, there's a lot of them, they operate really well. So we went and benchmarked against those, and then we normalised that for Australia, for being vertically integrated. We normalised it for our geographical spread, and we determined that we could reduce our subsidy by $100 million per annum. Now our revenue is under $500 million per year. Our costs are about $450 million per year. A lot of that is fixed cost depreciation. So it was a big deal, a really big deal. And then we went and developed 163 roadmaps to deliver that. And then the consultants left. And then we had to deliver that. And that's usually where it falls apart. But for us, it was really simple. We believed this end result was possible. So the roadmaps need to be delivered. When a roadmap wasn't going to deliver the benefit we thought it would, we replaced it with another roadmap. Because the $100 million was achievable, you just had to work out how to achieve it. So, we reduced costs. One of the things we did is we reduced our permanent headcount by 40%. Now, a lot of people said, what? How do you do that? Because you empower your people at the lower level, you provide some automated systems, you change your processes, you adapt to a new world. So we had streams in revenue, we had streams in generation, we had streams in capital productivity. A whole lot of initiatives that we needed to do over the next 4 years that we said we would do it. We delivered that a year early in January this year, locked in a $102 million saving in the state budget. From the start of this all the way through to the end of the forward estimates, which is 2021, I think, we're going to have saved, effectively the government, $638 million from this. So again, laser-like focus. Primary KPI we had that was $100 million. It was monitored every single month. Steering committee, each roadmaps had to be delivered, and they were systematically delivered, and we empowered our staff to the lowest level. We had principles associated with this: simplicity, capability, creating customer choice, removing barriers for technology, transforming our business, transforming the operating platform. Right, so then you've got to identify your future. So when you talk about transformation, what are we transforming to? We saw the future electricity before, we know disruptors are actually coming, but what does our future actually look like? We also hear renewables are going to be the biggest thing ever, generation by our customers. Cost curves are drastically falling. So what's the future? So going back a year or so, we developed our system blueprints. This is economic modelling for each of our supply costs and each of our systems. Not from a utility perspective, but from a system perspective. We put in there, into that economic modelling, different scenarios. One was centralised, which is what we fundamentally have now, which is just centralised generation, either diesel or gas. Then you've got distributed generation, which is PV or solar on the roofs of the community and the customers, with battery support for stability. And then you've got standalone, because that's off-grid. There's no connection to the network, that's a standalone. Each house in a community has their own PV battery and maybe some diesel backup. When we modelled that, we found that by 2025, 35% of our systems are most economically supplied by PV on our customers. 6% were standalone. So 2 of our communities by 2025 are better served by being standalone, each household having their own generation. That's the economics of it. By 2050, it's 65% and it's 12%. So 70% in total that's got nothing to do with the utility. Now, you can see the obvious in that graph. As consumers generate more, we lose revenue. So most organisations would go, whoa, let's just push this back as much as we possibly can. We can't let this actually happen. We didn't do that because you can't do that. Going back to the disruptors, if you don't provide what the customers want, somebody else will do it for you. You've got to find your revenue models in a new business model, in a new untraditional world. So you've got to embrace that change. You've got to embrace that disruption head on, and you've got to get involved in it and you've got to lead it. Because that's the only way that you'll be at the centre of the customer and their relationship. So with that there, we have the challenge. Now, clearly that also means potential asset impairments. So if you don't time what you're doing at the right time, you impair assets. this has happened in Europe. So in 13-14 alone in Europe, 55 billion euros were the asset impairments in energy companies, right? So when you're doing your NPV discounted cash flow analysis for new assets, and we look at that one there and say it's 2023, and we go, centralised is the best NPV model, you've got to add in risk of obsolescence of the asset. Because 2 years after that, it's cheaper for the customer to put it on, and they will put it on. There's currently technical barriers that stop it at the moment to a certain extent. Now, some of you in the room and us, we're breaking those barriers down. Again, why? Because we have to embrace it. Because if we don't do it, somebody else will do it. And therefore, the customer relationship is gone. So we've got our system blueprints. We know where we're going. We've got 6 to 8 systems that will be high penetration DR within the next 6 years, and some a lot sooner than that. Here's just an example. We talked about electric vehicles earlier. Here's an example of why you need to embrace that future. Right? On the right here, you've got we've got the car companies. They say electric vehicles phased out of fossil fuel vehicles by 2050. Toyota say that, Volvo say that, VW say 2025, 20%. They produce the vehicles. Now, on the left is the companies impacted by that. The oil companies. Surprise, surprise, they don't believe that. They think it's different. Now, I'm sure behind the scenes they do, and they're doing something, but if they're not, they've got to change their traditional models because somebody else will do it for them. So, service stations will be replaced by, Horizon power charging stations perhaps. Somebody else will step in if they don't do it, and I'm sure they are, but that's an example why you need to embrace that future. You look at it and say, it's not going to happen. It is, it will, and it will happen sooner, and you have to be customer-centric. Another example here. So the CSIRO and ENA did electricity network transformation roadmap, identified similar blueprints than what we have. So our modelling was verified by CSIRO and also done their own. There's some scenarios for the future that they have, right? So the scenarios, set and forget, rise of consumer, renewables thrive, have about 4% off-grid, 4% of investment over until 2050 on that. Now that's $42 billion, that's 4%. There's one here called leaving the grid, that's 35%. Now, do you know the difference between that realisation of that scenario and the other ones? Utilities don't respond. So somebody else responds. Somebody else provides what the customer wants. They lose the brand and relationship with the utility and they go off-grid. I don't want the 35%. I don't really want the 4, but it's better than the 35, and I can probably do business models that actually addresses the 4 and drives my revenue as well. So we know the future. We've set the future. Now we're going to work towards that future. Now we're going to transform. Now this is our digital transformation, implementing the enablers. Now, our digital transformation is about customer and about optimising our crew. Again, optimise our crew, lesser impacts for the customer. So we put our platforms in place. So we've got our cloud-based analytical platform using Azure, but we've also got to fix all the data as part of the enablers. So the guys always tell me you've got to fix the data first, and then put that in. We've got mobile application platforms. We're launching an app at the end of this month that's actually going to tell customers in near real time how much they owe and forecast their bill for that period, tell them their consumption. Now that's a data-rich app. So we've got to make sure the platforms are in place to do that. Enablers. We don't know what the other products may be as well, but we've got to put the platforms in place. In terms in the field, we're just rolling out ABB's Field Reach. Okay, so that brings all of these standards and all these work packages, big data sets onto a tablet for the guys. Actually, again, also gives us a real-time data set, another set of data to use. We can automate inspections and defects. You've heard this morning about some of the other things that can do as well. So we're rolling that out to optimise the crew, more data, also lessening customer impacts. We're doing a new upgrade for our billing platform as well. So getting ready for these new developments and new products is what you have to do, and what we've been systematically doing, making sure we get them right. Because one I'll talk about in a minute is our advanced meter infrastructure, which is our biggest foundation enabler. That brings a lot of data, more than we ever thought. So making sure you've got the right platforms that are scalable and flexible, like cloud-based solutions, enables you to then move forward quicker when you come up with different solutions. So when we put our advanced meter project in, so we've got advanced meters for our whole 48,000 footprint. We were lucky because we're remote and we've got high costs. Our business case stacked up better than others. We've got a 6-year payback. We delivered it early, within 12 months, including the remote communities. And out of 48,000 metres, we got 19 refusals. That's it. So we learned from the mistakes of some of the others in the past. We were very customer focused, really engaged in our communities, and it was a meter infrastructure deployment. Functionality comes later. Meter change, move on, get the platform. That allows us with that advanced meter infrastructure and the data sets to then enable high penetration DER, intelligent control systems, energy storage connections, all these aspects there come off that foundation. If the utility doesn't have advanced meter infrastructure out there, then you're lacking behind. You've got to put that foundation platform in for the future. It's essential. Those that haven't got it, find a business case. We found far greater benefits in revenue and others that we couldn't identify in the beginning out of that. So it's a key enabler for us. So going through that journey, we've addressed our core, we've reduced our cost base by $100 million, we've put some foundations in there, so we're now onto phase 2, effectively innovation and enable. But as we go forward with that, we've got to realign our strategy. So we've got a new strategy map. You'll see we've got business futures up in the top corner, so we now realise that we've got highly centralised and highly decentralised systems, standalone systems and remote communities that need a different type of approach. We've got creating customer choice. That means not only giving them data sets, but also the rise of the prosumer, this side here, which effectively says that customers want to self-generate, they want their own battery storage, they want to plug their cars in, some of them want to go standalone. Okay? And we've got to make sure we're following that, and by that we do modular generation, reduces asset impairment as they take that on board and gives us flexibility. Multi-flow network and intelligent control systems. We've got to solve that for the customer as well, to become customer-centric, to embrace that disruption. We've got our KPI down along the side, down the bottom, which was 100 million. Now we've now replaced that because that heavy lifting's done. We've now got enterprise value because we're about growth and innovation now. Collaboration and technology now becomes more important than ever before. So collaboration with strategic partners like ABB, like other universities, and technology becomes a core part of it. But our strategy, creating customer choice by being the world's best microgrid company, has, in the middle there, our microgrid operating platform. So those disruptors we talked about before, Uber, etc., they're platform businesses. They connect customers. They're customer-centric. Well, Horizon Power has a microgrid operating platform at the centre, a platform business, connecting customers, and we're now customer-centric. That enables us to provide the standalone systems, the multi-flow networks, and even the digital marketplace, because we're now at the centre of the customer and we work out what the customer wants and we provide that to them. And as we go along, some areas of our revenue decline, but then we provide other opportunities to replace that. The alternative is we say no, push it back, and then our business erodes and somebody else has taken it off us. So we're now a platform business, we're now customer-centric. So then we innovate to realise the strategy. So innovation is fantastic, technology is fantastic, but you've got to know what you're innovating for. Innovation for the sake of it could end up with products or services or things that have no value and no purpose to you. Now we've articulated our strategy, we're creating customer choice, we've got an operating platform at the centre, we're a microgrid company, islanded microgrids, and then we move forward and say, okay, now we've got the platforms in place as well, so we've got advanced meter infrastructure, we've got things like field reach, we've got analytical platforms, now we innovate on top of that. That's how we get ahead and that's how we realise what the customer wants. Onslow. It would be remiss of me I didn't talk about Onslow. So Onslow is in Western Australia, in the Pilbara. It's a town of about 600 households. And there's a big Chevron operation going offshore there, and so the town has to be revitalised, and the population grows substantially, if not doubles. So the infrastructure's got to be replaced. So we're undergrounding that network to start off with, and then we're creating Australia's largest islanded DER microgrid. Okay, so 50% will be renewable, 50% will be DER in some respect. So you've got centralised solar, you've got high penetration DER, you've also got gas generation, and you've got battery storage. And ABB's got their inverters and switchboard in the centre of it all. So this is effectively bringing 2050 to 2019. So the centralised power station's underway, the solar farm's coming shortly, and we're working on the DER. Now that's not just those aspects there, but it's also customer models. Making sure we engage the customer, putting the penetration on the customers for the DER, engaging the customer models is really important. We need to test that so that we know how to roll it out to those other communities I've talked about in the 34 microgrids. And so this, in terms, talks about grid automation. All the technologies that have been talked about this morning and maybe in the next couple of days, we're effectively putting in place here in Onslow in the next 2 years or less. That's just one. I won't talk too much about this one. There's more technical people in the room than me. But some of the things we talk about is when you've got a lot of high penetration DER, you sometimes don't have oomph on the system to register faults. Low loads as well at the lower level for the dispatchable. How does some of the generation actually work? Where does the battery fit into it on a spinning reserve basis? You know, what is the role of the battery and solar in the system? How does a good automation effectively work? How do we really control the inverters and the customers? What's the intelligent control system? So all of these will be solved and put in place in Onslow in the next year. An example of innovation where you think that we're looking to solve something and you end up solving something else. So this one here is a design blueprint effectively for one of our systems. I think it's a part of Onslow actually. And so the problem we have is if we've got high penetration DER, then how do we design this light network, right, for the PV, and how do we control that? So we did some analysis. This is a fundamental design based out of usual standards. And for us, a standard for, say, a residential household might be 10 kVA. That's because we've got a lot of air conditioning. So you piece that all together into the system, you end up with a network that requires 23 transformers. Okay, so then we looked and we optimised the design of the network using some genetic algorithms and iterative process. And this has got nothing to do with battery or PV. But with our advanced meter data and the data sets we came in, we could actually design a more specific granular network that actually reduces our transformer requirement from 23 to 12. So we don't need the PV and the battery for this light network. We can do this now. So that's what we discovered in this sort of process, which was fantastic for us, because that means that in a cycle of investment, before we get high penetration DER of our customers, we can actually put this light network in advance, in conjunction with our asset management planning process. If you add the batteries in, you can drop another couple of transformers. Now, this is really interesting. 30% cost reduction for this design. 23% just by optimising the data that we have from our advanced meters. And 7,200 kVA to 1,700 kVA is huge. So that's the innovation that we're looking at in the data sets, and that's where you go down one path to solve something and you find that you've got a better way to do it and you can already solve it now, which is great for us. We're looking at a light underground network in Denham, another small place in Western Australia coming up in the next couple of years where we're going to implement this, as well as high penetration DER and connect it to wind at the same time. This is part of the microgrids and the strategy that we have going forward to meet the customer. Power plants is another one we're really, really excited about. So we won an Innovation Award for Clean Energy Council very recently on this. This is a different way of charging the retailers. Again, on the platform of advanced meters and the infrastructure data, we know consumption for every single household. We know their contribution to peak for every single household. We've had this in place for over 12 months, so we've got a different way of charging. So uniform tariff is a fixed amount of variable cost regardless of when you consume, day or night. There's no incentives to reduce the peak under that. And the peak is a problem for everybody because you've got to have the capacity for that. So we've got a new product. It's called a power plan. It's like a mobile phone plan. You get charged for the amount that you consume in units in your peak period between 1 and 8 p.m. And you're only allowed to use so much. And you can have a small, medium, or large plan based on your previous consumption. We give you an app. We give you alerts to say, hey, you're going to go over it, turn something off. Now, we did a pilot in Port Hedland on this, 407 customers, and we gave them a stretch target up to 20% reduction in your peak demand. And we gave them incentives. So this was ran from January to March this year. We had 61 businesses there, and we gave them the tool set, the app, the announcements. We gave energy sort of surveys. So what are the appliances in your household? We give them some education, and then we let them go. You get 4 chances, so any hour in that 1 to 8 over the 3 months, you go over that hour, you lose one of your incentives. You've got 4 chances to get incentives. 97% of the participants got incentives, which means that they changed their behaviours. Right? And we found that they did that within 2 months. Now, air conditioning is the major load for everybody at the peak. So, an example is a family come home from school, they disperse to their bedrooms, 4 air conditioning units go on. The mother said, no, I don't think so. You're in the dining room table. They go off until 8 o'clock. And I'll do the washing in the morning. And that was all it took. And those behaviours were set within a month. Right? So that proved to us that not only did customers understand the concept of this power plan. Now, when I talk about the fixed charge, that means that you know how much you're paying fixed-wise, which is probably 80% of your bill, every month for 12 months. And then your energy charge is, say, 9 cents is the same regardless. Okay? And you can control that. So you can actually consume the same amount of energy and spread it over the day and actually get charged less. So this is good for vulnerable customers, for retirees, for those that consume quite a lot, but in an even pattern. So what we found is given the right tool sets and incentives, customers can change behaviours, and they will. And so the power plans are something. And also power plans does that cost recovery for, heaven forbid, the utility, because you're charging people for their contribution to the cost at peak. So if you're going to consume at that time, you're going to have to pay for that, but you also have the tools to reduce that if you want to. So that's our power plans. That'll be rolling out a soft launch later this year, and we hope to make that go mandatory at a future time in conjunction with support from the government, should we get it. At the moment it's a soft launch, so it's a product offer. Again, we think it's the future because addressing that costs with a higher level of PV coming on and making sure that the network cost is contained and the capacity is important. So I've talked about how we've transformed effectively from a digital perspective with those platforms, and I know this is at a reasonably high level, but also how we transformed our business, addressing our cost base, making ourselves lean and hungry for the future, and giving ourselves money back to actually put those futures in place and embracing that. We've got power plans launching. We've got an app launch, as I talked about, later in the month that's going to tell consumers how much they owe in real time, near real time. We've got consumer energy products. So a lot of the information that's been talked about previously, we now have the platforms to actually roll out. And we have the customer data to roll out the right product for the right customer. At the same time, from a network perspective, we can look at load forecasting, we can look at transform monitoring. We've got the whole spectrum because we're vertically integrated. But as talked about earlier, the future is even more exciting. So augmented reality in terms of training and network controls. The talk about before about asset management, that predictive side is really important. We've got an innovation division, like a lot of you have. They use design thinking, they use lean canvas and agile. We've got predictive analysis teams and machine learning teams that are in the business. They're all ripe and hungry to put these sort of things in place. But we had to make sure the platforms were there first in the transformation. Why the platforms are there, and we're building a customer-centric business. So we've got to make sure that what we're putting in place here either optimises our field crew to make ourselves cheaper and more efficient, or provides the customer what they fundamentally want. Because you have to embrace this disruption, embrace the future, because then you get the ability to put the cool stuff in and meet the customer expectation. And that's effectively what we're doing here. And the new payment channels is one of those. So I expect shortly in the near future, our customers will get an SMS saying, do you want to pay some of their bill? Yeah, okay, fine, done. We've got prepayment solutions. A whole lot of that future is available because we've transformed our cost base, put enablers in place, put our strategy to deliver that in place, which focus our employees clearly on it. About 90% in the survey, Denison's survey of our customers in a cultural survey, know and understand very clearly what our vision is. Our whole employee base is on board with this new future created. We like to think the future of electricity has been reinvented, especially in the island microgrids in Australia. We'd like to think in Western Australia, in towns like Broome, Onslow and Houlahan. So Houlahan's got the power station system from ABB. We're looking to put a battery in there, so the solutions for development and strategic partnerships. We like to see that that's actually happening and transforming. And Horizon Power has been transforming into the world's best microgrid company. Again, by being customer-centric, by embracing disruption, and by creating customer choice. Thank you.